Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
There is none worthy of worship besides Allah, the one who is unique and has no partners. And we bear witness that Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's servant and messenger. قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم, Allah says in the Holy Quran, ثم جعلناك على شريعة من الأمر فاتبعها ولا تتبع أهواء الذين لا يعلمون. Allah says, then we put you on a code of law ordained, so follow it and follow not the desires of those without knowledge. And then Allah says, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمِ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And then Allah says, direct yourself authentically towards the way of life, the natural way of Allah, the nature of humanity. The creation of Allah is consistent. That is the correct way of life, but most of humankind have no knowledge of this. So the Quran advocates that humanity is one and that there is no distinction amongst people except on the basis of Allah consciousness. So whether you're black or white, or whether you're rich or poor, or whether you're famous or not so famous, there is no distinction in front of Allah except on the basis of Allah consciousness. So who has the most piety in them? That is what Allah looks at. So the Quran promotes the idea that ignorance or a lack of knowledge leads one away from Allah consciousness, and hence allow this distinction to be made between those who possess knowledge and those who don't possess knowledge. Often we hear Allah says that, can the blind be compared to those who see? Can the ignorant be compared to those who have knowledge? So those kind of distinctions Allah does make in the Quran. And so there's something to be said about having knowledge and being Allah conscious. So no one would dispute that seeking knowledge in Islam is a top priority, since the very first revelation and command to the Nabi Muhammad was Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, to read, to seek and to proclaim in the name of Allah. So knowledge in Islam is of high priority. The knowledge of the universe has many branches, and so in order to enrich our understanding of the creation and the Creator, we have to seek knowledge from as many sources and sciences as possible. For example, if a judge has to make a judgment around a particular problem or a particular person, then the judge cannot just look at it from one side. He has to look at many different sides before he can make a judgment. And similarly, when we need to make a judgment for ourselves, then we also have to look at many different avenues and aspects before we reach a conclusion. And so to merely have religious and spiritual knowledge does not make one knowledgeable. One has to reach out and seek as many knowledge and sciences as possible. Neither does just having spiritual and religious knowledge make you a wise person or a good Muslim. So the way we receive knowledge of Islam may be different for many people. Those who embrace Islam had the luxury of studying Islam and choosing to adopt the faith or not adopt it, while most of us are born Muslim. We're Muslim by default and being born in Muslim homes. So while the knowledge of the convert may have come from independent sources and from his own independent searching for this knowledge, most of our knowledge has come from our families and from our community mosques and madrasas. So the way in which this knowledge was departed to us, it was as if it was the only truth. Now if you look back at how we were brought up, we were inadvertently trained to believe that Muslims are the people that have been chosen and they're going to go to heaven, and everybody else, they need to do something about that. Because otherwise they're not going to make it. And there were many other things that we were taught to make us feel as if we're superior in terms of our community than other people. But this is not what Islam is teaching us. But back then when we were little, we didn't know much. So we accepted it, we believed it, we trusted it. It comes from our parents, it comes from our religious leaders, it comes from our community. And this was our sense of belonging. So the group that you find identity with is called the in-group in psychology. And so our in-group was called the Muslim community. And so sometimes individuals within this in-group, through specific activities and behavior, would try to establish the entitlement to membership of the group, such activities and behaviors that enhance the status of the group and the entitlement to belong to it. So for example, we would say things like, it's only Muslims that are going to Jannah because it makes us feel special. And so we have entitlement to belong to this group. I am a Muslim, I believe in God, I pray 5 times a day, and I do this and I do that, so I have entitlement to belong to this group. But we don't just do that to further, to create entitlement for ourselves. We have to look at the other groups and what they are not. So Christians are this and so they're not that, and so they're not like us. And Jews are like this and so they're not like us. And this is how we establish our own supremacy within our group. The group then starts to socialize, to socially categorize the world as us and them. The in-group then starts to look at negative traits within the out-group to highlight it so as to create their own superiority. So we don't know much about Christians, we don't know much about homosexuals, we don't know much about Jews and Hindus because we've already added them. We've been socialized to believe that these people are different from us. So we need to make a distinction between our group identity as Muslims and what is the meaning of Islam. And sometimes people think that these two are the same thing. If you travel through the world, you'll find that Islam has many different faces. You have Wahhabi Islam, you have Deobandi Islam, you have Sunni Islam, Shia Islam, Khawariji Islam, Sufi Islam, and the list is endless. So there's not one particular understanding of Islam, and often you'll find that if you travel, you go to the Indo-Pak region and there's a particular flavor of Islam. It's a very Indian flavor of Islam. You go to Indonesia and there's a different flavor of Islam. You go to Saudi Arabia and it's a very Arab Wahhabi kind of Islam. So this Islam, this Islamic community or Muslim community that we come from seems to have been formed through culture, and Islam has become the agent that has formulated that culture. So this is exactly what happened to the global Muslim community over the last 1400 years and what is still happening to us today. Many splits have happened because of differences, and so Islam is not homogeneous. It's not just one big family. Like somebody said that it's stupid to say that the Muslim community, there's no such a thing as a Muslim community. We have Muslim communities. So Islam is not homogeneous because culture is different in the world. Geographical boundaries makes us different. There's differences of opinion, there's differences of temperaments, and all of these come into play. It is traditionally believed that the Muslims will split into 73 sects. The Nabi Muhammad ﷺ said this. So hence differences will continue to exist amongst Muslims. So at what point does the 73 sects become a blessing? And at what point does it become a curse? It becomes a curse when we start looking at we the in-group and they the out-group. But when it becomes a blessing is that we can say that actually that group does it like this and that group does it like that. Actually I can look at that and I can learn from that. Imagine we all had to do the same thing in this world. It would have been a boring world. It would have been a colorless world. So that is when differences in my ummah becomes a blessing. So based on this, there is no such a thing as the right in group, right? Everybody is right in their own way. So can anyone claim that they're really part of the in group? By saying yes to this question, that I am part of the in group, that I am a Tablighi Muslim and I am saved, or I am a Salafi Muslim and I am saved, by merely stating that, you're already going contrary to the teaching of Islam, which says that no superiority of one group with another. But however, we can claim that our group is part of a human race that will constantly differ with other groups, and hence the right of the individual to belong or not to belong to a group needs to be respected. So when we think of ourselves as the in-group, we limit our understanding and we rob ourselves from the experience of other groups. Right? There's lots to be learned from Christians, there's lots to be learned from Jews, there's lots to be learned from a bunch of homosexuals. But if we just saying to ourselves that we are the in-group and we are right, you rob yourself from the understanding of the other groups. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الكريم ونفعنا إياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم إنه جواد ملك بر رب رؤوف رحيم. May Allah bless me and you through the guidance of His noble Quran, and may its teachings and remembrances benefit me and you. For truly Allah is the possessor of wealth, the sovereign, the all-good, the one who has authority over us, the all-loving, the all-merciful. So it's important to realize that when we talk about our in-group, that the Muslim community is our in-group, and Islam is the agent that was used to bond that Muslim group. And they're not both the same things. The Muslim community has used Islam to shape its identity as a group, and has adapted Islam to the different understandings. As I said, when you travel to different parts of the world, you'll find that the different cultures has given flavor to Islam in that particular region. Look at Iran and look at Indonesia, you find two very different understandings of Islam, but both claim that their Islam is the better one. So what is this Islam that we're talking about, and why is it different from the Muslim community? Islam means peace. It also means submission. It also means to surrender. And so when Allah mentions this code of life that I mentioned in the beginning, the Sharia, in verse 45, verse 18 of the Quran, and when Allah mentions the way of life, ad-deen, in Surah 30, verse 30, for example, this is Islam. It's a code of life, and it's a way of life. So Islam is a natural way of life that is congruent with universal laws and scientific findings. Anything that goes against that grain is not Islam. And Allah says that this is Deenullah. It is the way of Allah. It is the natural code of life. Allah has intended it to be that way. So when we close the gap between ignorance and knowledge of the universe, this is Islam. When we create peace between that which we cannot change and that which we have to accept, this is Islam. When we submit to the natural laws of life and our own innateness, this is Islam. When we surrender to the code of life, this is Islam. When we create congruency between the self and its existence within that code of life, this is Islam. When we bring consciousness to the value, the rights and the dignity of fellow human beings that are coexisting with us, whether they're in different groups, that is Islam. When our prayers and our fasting becomes tools to tame our lower self and its base desires so that we can live within this code of life, that is Islam. If we are searching for true Islam, then we have to remove the lens of our group and open ourselves up to appreciate Islam, and to also find the vehicle towards, or find Islam as our vehicle towards self-actualization and spiritual fulfillment. So, that's a mouthful. What I'm basically trying to say is that your Islam or your own Islamic identity cannot be shaped by your Muslim community. Islam at that level becomes very personal. What is it that I need to learn? What is it that I need to give up, to surrender, or to submit to, in order to find self-actualization and spiritual fulfillment? So your community cannot dictate. There's none that it's nice to belong. Everybody wants to belong. If one community rejects you, you're looking for another. Because human beings have a need to belong. So we ask Allah to help us to be able to define what is true Islam for us. We ask Allah to help us not to focus on the things that separates us as human beings, but rather to focus on the things that keeps us united. And we also ask Allah to give us knowledge that will enrich our understanding of others and acceptance of the vast differences amongst mankind. Allahumma ansur man nasara dina Muhammad. Allahumma ansur al-mujahideen fi kulli makan. Allahumma yassir wa la tu'assir.